Hello, everyone. I'm just gonna wait a few minutes just for everyone to start coming in. Hi, Chanch. Hi, Ali. Hi, Han. So just gonna wait a couple minutes. Hey, Ali. Hi, Anisha. Glad you could come. Sandy. Hello. Thanks, guys. Thanks so much for coming in. So while we're waiting for everyone to join, just a bit of background info about me. So I am a registered osteopath. I graduated from the UCO, University College of Osteopathy, last year. And now I'm working in Sheffield. Currently, because of COVID-19, we're not practicing we are practicing osteopathy virtually, but we're not doing face-to-face. So we've had a lot of time to do these Instagram lives and things like that. So yeah, thank you all for coming. I will be answering a lot of questions, but actually at the end. So if you have any questions, please use the question box or just type it in the comments and I'll go through them at the end and answer all your questions and things like that. So joining me will be my friend and colleague Maxi. She also graduated last year from the UCO. She's an osteopath, but alongside studying osteopathy, she actually did her diploma in nutritional therapy. So she is a nutritional therapist, and she's currently in London. And she's also studying functional medicine at the moment. So yeah, super smart. Great. So I'll just come on and add Maxi to the live. This works. So let's see. Hey, Izzy. Maxi,
Hi.
hello.
How are you doing?
I'm good. I was like, I hope this works.
Yeah, me too.
I'm glad. Thank you for joining. So yeah, thanks for joining. And Maxi, if you just want to introduce yourself to everyone.
Good. Hello, everyone. My name is Maxi. I'm an osteopath and nutritional therapist. I did my nutritional therapy diploma alongside my Masters of Osteopathy and graduated then in 2018. So I'm currently doing a course in functional medicine as a certified practitioner with the Institute of Functional Medicine in the US. And functional medicine is basically a very holistic approach to health and holistic approach to chronic diseases.
That's so interesting.
Yeah.
I've definitely heard a lot about the term functional medicine. I think did it come from the US?
I think, yeah, that's where it had its origin in 1998,
Yeah.
but it's kind of spreading across the globe now.
Amazing. So today we're actually going to speak about how we can support the immune system during COVID-19. So that's kind of the topic for today. So Maxi, let's get started. What is COVID-19? How is it related to the immune system, and why is taking care of our immune system at this time super important?
Yeah, absolutely. So as the name suggests, coronavirus is a virus. But coronavirus strains have been around since the 1960s. So it's quite a popular virus in that sense. But COVID-19 is a new strain of virus. So our immunity as a population has never been exposed to this virus. So therefore, it's quite difficult to know how our bodies react to it. And what I mean by that is we haven't kind of built the adaptive immunity yet. So we have two types of immunity. We have our innate immunity. So that's the immunity we have from very early on. It's a very non-specific immunity. So it's basically when we encounter a virus or bacteria, that type of immunity just throws whatever it has at this virus, which can be associated with a lot of collateral damage as well. Whereas the adaptive immunity is something we acquire over a long time, and it requires previous virus or pathogen exposure. So, for example, you have a viral infection, and then you develop so-called antibodies against that viral infection, and when it comes around again, you're able to fight that infection off. So because COVID is a new virus, we haven't had the chance to build those antibodies yet, and that's the problem.
And what are antibodies, just for the people who are watching that?
Exactly, absolutely. So those are little proteins that your immune cells, or a certain type of your immune cell, produce to fight an infection, and they're very specific. So they only react with a certain type of virus or bacteria.
Yeah, so it's because our bodies haven't we haven't been exposed to it before, so it's new and it doesn't really have the sort of antibodies to kind of protect us.
But what we need to understand with immunity, it goes much beyond than just like fighting infections. So it also determines our ability to repair tissues, and how we react to fairly harmless substances, for example, pollen. So people with an overactive immune system will develop hay fever. Healthy immunity also determines, or like immunity also determines if we, for example, attack our own body tissues, which we quite often see in like autoimmune conditions.
Yeah, there are a lot of autoimmune conditions out there.
Exactly.
So moving on to kind of the first area, which is really important, sleep.
Yes.
Obviously, we all know sleep is important. Everyone says, get, whatever, 7-8 hours of sleep. But why exactly is sleep important, and how is it related to the immune system?
So to understand the importance of sleep, you need to understand that the sleep is kind of divided in two phases. So we have the so-called superficial sleep, also called the rapid eye movement sleep. That's basically when your eyes move from side to side when you sleep, and that's when we dream. Dream is very important for us to store memory and to make connections in our brain. So basically to digest what we've encountered in day-to-day life and make sense of it. But then we have the deep sleep called non-REM sleep, so non-rapid eye movement sleep. And that's when our immune system really repairs and prepares for the next day. So if we don't sleep enough, then we don't have enough time to repair and basically prime our immune system for the next day.
So when we sleep, that's kind of our body healing and things like that.
Exactly. It's very important, especially in the first half of the night. This is where the non-REM sleep, the deep sleep, is more prominent than in the second half of the night.
Interesting. So kind of the main healing is sort of in the first half.
Exactly.
Okay. I did not know that.
Mm.
So a question that I know a lot of people are asking, and also think, because I asked a couple of people, how do we know that we're getting enough sleep? Like, some people can sleep 6 hours and they feel fine. Some people can sleep 10 hours and they wake up and they still feel exhausted. So how do we know exactly that we're getting enough sleep?
That's a really good question. So rule of thumb is you should sleep between 7 to 9 hours uninterrupted, high quality sleep. There are people who claim they can kind of survive on less. You either belong to the lucky group where you're genetically predisposed to survive on less sleep, or if you've just conditioned your body to less sleep. So the best way to kind of track if you have had enough sleep is you don't need an alarm to wake up in the morning. So your natural body clock kind of wakes you up. You don't need caffeine, and you're also to kind of wake up in the morning, and you are alert throughout the day, so you don't have those energy crashes.
Yeah.
A good way of tracking your sleep quality is by getting a sleep tracker app, for example, or like Sleep Tracker is the app I use. It shows you your sleep quality, and you can type in certain factors, certain things. For example, if you had coffee before you went to bed, or if you had a headache, or if you had a nap throughout the afternoon. And then over time you will be able to associate those factors with your sleep quality and then kind of do some lifestyle interventions.
Interesting. You talked about sort of lifestyle interventions.
Yeah.
What are those? What are the strategies people can use to get better sleep if they, for me as well, like,
Yeah.
I don't know if it's during this quarantine pandemic, but I just wake up and feel tired. But what can people do to help them get better sleep?
Yeah, so I think the key is you have to kind of boost your Zeitgebers. Those are aspects that determine your sleep-wake cycle. So basically your internal body clock that kind of stimulates you to be more tired or more awake. And one of the key Zeitgebers is your hormone melatonin that is very low in the morning when you wake up, and it increases over daytime, and it's very dependent on sunlight exposure. So the moment the sun sets, melatonin will increase and signal your brain it's time to go to bed. So a really good way of interrupting this hormone and kind of manipulating this hormone is by blue light exposure from screens. So, and we have that from our iPhones, iPads, MacBooks, etc. So, because that blue light is basic, has the same frequency as afternoon sunlight. So we are basically signaling melatonin in our brain that it's afternoon, and that prevents us from getting tired. So I would suggest try to avoid screen exposure. And if you have those light filters like night shifts, yes, they might potentially block the blue light, but you still sacrifice the 1 or 2 hours of sleep.
Yeah,
like watching Netflix instead of going to sleep.
I'm definitely guilty of that.
Yeah, I think me too. Me too. Me too. Another Zeitgeber, for example, is a cool environment. So you want to have a sleeping environment between 16 and 18 degrees. And a good way of also cooling your body temperatures by taking a hot bath or drinking hot tea, because although you're surrounded by heat, your core temperature, your body temperature will drop, and that signals sleep. Oh. Also, I would suggest bed association is very important, especially for people who struggle to fall asleep. Like if you're someone who tends to eat a lot in bed, or you do non-sleep associated things in bed, the bed might be associated with everything else apart from sleeping. So try to move them somewhere else, so your bed is purely there for sleep and some other things.
Yeah, let's leave that out of this live. I think my dad's watching as well. Hey, Dad. Sucks. Anyways, yeah, bed association is super important. I think your bedroom as well has a certain energy. I don't know if you think the same, but I think if I sort of watch TV in bed or eat in bed, I just feel like when I go actually to bed, I just think of those things that kind of happened around that area, and just don't really get to sleep.
Yeah.
So you mentioned caffeine.
Yes.
And obviously most of us do drink caffeine. I'm guilty of doing a lot of that. Obviously in small portions, caffeine's not an issue, but what is the problem with too much caffeine, or, caffeine in general?
Yeah, so I think the problem with caffeine is just its half-life. So in pharmacological terms, half-life means how long it takes for your body to break that substance down till it only has like half the levels in your blood levels.
Yeah.
So exactly. And for caffeine, it's 7 hours. So when you do the maths, when you have a coffee late in the afternoon around 3 o'clock, let's say 3 o'clock, it will take you till 10 o'clock in the evening to break it down to half. And that's just something to be mindful of. Just I'd suggest have the last coffee maybe in the morning or just after lunch, but avoid to have it late in the afternoon.
Later, yeah.
Exactly.
I know that obviously some people, I know a lot of people can have a coffee at night and they fall asleep. I think that's also genetics as well, isn't it?
Very much so. It has to do with genetic traits, so-called snaps in your genes that can alter your metabolism of caffeine.
Yeah, awesome. But yeah, that was super informative. Like sleep in general is really important for us. Another factor that I wanted to ask you about is stress. And I know in this situation, a lot of us are anxious, stressed, because of uncertainty, and a lot of other things as well.
Absolutely.
How exactly is stress bad for the immune system? Because we hear a lot about too much stress causes XYZ. Yeah, how does too much stress negatively impact the immune system?
I think that's a really good question, because I think stress has received a lot of really bad rep over the last couple of years. And what we need to understand, stress is a really vital response happening in our body to something that could be a threat to us. So think about back thousands of years ago, when we were still running around, running away from tigers. We needed this stress response, also called fight or flight response, in order to survive. So what happens in that fight or flight response is your heart rate speeds up in order to send blood to your muscles so you can run away. Your breathing rate speeds up so you can provide really important oxygen to those muscles. But at the same time, functions which are less important for survival, like your digestion, your sex drive, your immunity, are being suppressed. So you might think, well, yeah, immunity is important. Yeah, it is, but not in that moment in time. Afterwards, yes, but not at that moment in time.
Not when you're getting chased by a tiger.
Exactly. And on top of this, what happens? Immunity isn't suppressed at all levels at the same time or at the same rate. So when you have this fight or flight response, then your immune system favors an antibacterial response over an antiviral response. So you're more likely to be able to fight off bacterial infections than viral infections. So we live now in a society where we don't hopefully don't have to run away from tigers anymore, but we have to run to the tube. Our boss shouts at us. We can't figure out what we should get our spouse for Christmas. Things like this, they elicit the same stress response as the fight or flight response that we had thousands of years ago. So that's one of the big aspects why our immunity is suppressed. And then on top of that, stress releases certain substances that are supposed to be within our cells. So they're called mitochondria. They are the energy factories of your body. And when they get outside of your cell and they end up in your bloodstream where they're not supposed to be, your immune system will fight them. And that's one of also a reason why we have not only an immune suppression and therefore a problem with something that wants to come in, or like fighting pathogens from the outside, but we also have this low grade inflammation happening within our body.
Very interesting. So you constantly having that low grade inflammation.
Exactly. And then one of also very important factor, stress decreases our secretory immunoglobulin A. So we talked about immunoglobulin. Those are those antibodies exactly that fight infections. And secretory means it's just on all your mucous membrane. So it's in your mouth, it's in your gut, it's on your eyes. And when that defense is down, it's basically your biggest first line defense that's suppressed.
Yeah.
That makes you more prone to infections.
So it basically stress decreases those like frontline workers that are, basically in your saliva and things like
that. Absolutely.
That's really interesting. Thank you. I know a lot of us are stressed in general. What are your tips for stress management?
Yeah, so I think sleep is really important, because what happens during sleep is we mop up all those chemicals that are associated with a high stress response. So it really resets our immune system. So I think sleep is really important in times of stress. Always important, very important as well during times of stress. And also boost your vagus nerve tone. So your vagus nerve is the longest nerve in your body. So it runs from your brain all the way into the gut, exactly. And it's really important in resetting your immune system. And the way you can stimulate your vagus nerve and to kind of make sure there is a high vagal tone, meditation really helps. Breathing techniques, especially when your exhalation is longer than your inhalation, and walking in nature, you know, like it's also called gardener's high. It really helps us with our happy hormones and feel good. And also the smell you encounter, you know, especially when you walk through forest, that can trigger some really immune boosting properties. And if you don't have a forest around, you can buy essential oils and it will have the same effect.
I'm obsessed with essential oils. Anyone who knows,
I love them.
Knows that I'm obsessed. Thank you. That's really you know, really good information. I think one thing that I want to add is in terms of meditation and stuff, there's so many really good apps out there. There's Calm, there's Insight Timer. Yeah, I don't really know the other.
Headspace.
Insight Timer. Headspace, yeah.
Headspace is really good.
Really good. They're really, really good. One thing that I've heard about boosting the immune system is a cold shower. I don't know if it's a hype or not, but you know, being in the cold shower, don't really know how long. What do you think about taking cold showers? Do you think it's just a hype, or do you think it, you know, it helps?
So cold showers, like this whole cold exposure, has some pretty solid science behind it. I do it every morning. So 20 seconds cold shower after your warm shower is pretty good for immune strengthening. And that has to do with a so-called, you build up your resilience. So there's something called positive stress, which is also called eustress. And that's basically a short bouts of a stress response that help you to become more resilient. So you're basically raising your threshold to stress. And cold exposure does that. If you're not a big fan of cold exposure, you can do heat exposure. So saunas, for example. And they don't just say again.
Sorry, go ahead.
No, they so they don't just make you more resilient and boost your immune cell count, but they also create something called heat shock proteins, and heat shock proteins are anti-inflammatory in themselves.
Okay. Oh,
so yeah.
I was saying,
or best do both.
Yeah, do both.
Like the
really hot and then really, really cold. Exactly. I was just saying, if no one has a sauna and they're in Dubai, that a lot of people that are watching, just go outside.
Yeah.
3 degrees.
Exactly.
The next sort of factor and topic I wanted to ask you about is exercise. And I know a lot of people are in quarantine at the moment and they are exercising to relieve stress, and also just obviously a lot of people are bored, so they're exercising. We all know that exercise is good for us. It's, you know, it's a fact. It's a well-known fact. But can you tell me more about the relationship between exercise and the immune system?
Yeah. So it's very similar to this heat and cold exposure. It's basically a way of creating resilience in your body when you exercise regularly. And it also changes your gut microbiome. And we will talk about the gut microbiome later on, because the gut microbiome is very important for the immune system. And what they've recently found out was what exercise can do. So you have this gland called the thymus that sits around here, and your thymus is really important in immune cell production, and that thymus shrinks over time and shrinks with age. So if you exercise, you stimulate a hormone-like structure, so a messenger structure that stops the thymus from shrinking. And this is why regular exercise is so important, even outside of a pandemic. And absolutely. And exercise also helps you to convert fat tissue into muscle tissue. And we know now that certain type of fat tissue is, we call it metabolically active. So it's can increase inflammatory markers in your body. So, and you don't want to be in this constant inflammatory state. So this conversion of fat cells into muscle cells is definitely a good idea.
Yeah, to help with the immune system.
Absolutely.
And just can you just quickly go over what the thymus is again?
So this it's a structure, we call it a gland, and it sits around here, and it can it produces immune cells, very specific immune cells.
And does that it stop it? And you said exercise helps it shrink, or
prevents it from shrinking,
shrinking?
because
Okay.
it shrinks naturally with age. This is why we see a drop in immunity in elderly people.
Yeah.
And so this is one of the ways to naturally boost your immune system.
Amazing. Yeah, I had no idea about the thymus. Amazing. One other thing I wanted to ask you about is, I know a lot of people are exercising at home, and that's amazing. That's really, really good for your body. But some people, if they're used to exercising 3 times a week, now they're exercising, 6 times a week. And obviously there's risk of injuries and things like that. But is there a risk of overtraining in terms of just generally?
I think
overtraining.
Well, I think overtraining can always be a factor, because if you go from 0 to 100, like, you overload your structures, like your tissue structures, your muscles, your bones, your ligaments. So you need to give it time to develop that resilience. And when it comes to overtraining and the immune system, so again, exercise is a stress response in itself, and yeah, it can make you more resilient. But if you do too much in a short period of time, or you're not prepared to do as much, then it can quickly turn into negative stress, which can cause the gut damage. It will eat away the resources that you normally need for your immune system. So you might see more ill health. You can feel more exhausted, and you struggle with tissue repair, because you're eating away on the resources that are really important also for your immune system.
Yeah, so you probably will get an increase in injuries, but also a decrease in your immune system.
Absolutely.
Very interesting. Are there like signs of overtraining and things like that?
So I'd say look for exhaustion. So if you struggle to get out of bed the next day and you feel really tired, also exercise should make you excited. So if you kind of fall into this negative mood, exhaustion spiral, and you're not really eating a well-balanced diet of carbohydrates and proteins and fats, then you should really dig a bit deeper and see if you're not overdoing it. Especially it takes a couple of weeks to build up resilience. So don't try to compare yourself with a pro athlete. Even it took them years to build up to that level, and they most of the time have coaches, they have nutritional therapists supporting them. So it's really important to kind of check in with yourself and kind of see if you're not overdoing it.
Yeah, you'd rather do something progressively,
absolutely,
and finish where you want to be, rather than quickly just to get it done, to get to a level
exactly,
and risk your immune system and also injuries and things like that. You mentioned that food is really important, and also you mentioned earlier about our microbiome. Can you just sort of tell us more about what the microbiome is, how it is related to our immune system, and also how can we help our immune system with food, nutrition, diet, and diet?
So in order to understand that, you need to understand that the 70% of your immune system sits in your gut, which is a really large amount of the immune system. And that is thought to have to do with the way our ancestors lived. And what our ancestors really needed to be worried about was all the bacteria and viruses they ingest, and parasites they ingested with the food and the water, because they didn't have the kind of tools we have nowadays to clean foods and make sure they're really hygienic. So, and this is why it's suspected that the immune system, and such a large quantity of our immune system, sits in our gut. And what we mean by microbiome, and this comes in form of the microbiome, that immune system. And our microbiome, there are trillions of gut bugs. And the genetic material is larger than the genetic material of the human body. So that just shows you how large it is.
How important it is.
Absolutely. Yeah. And it's now in the scientific literature and from the scientific body accepted as an organ in itself because of all its function as it has. It has a more metabolic activity than our liver, and it has the mass of our liver. So bear in mind, your liver is the largest organ in your body. So just to give you some background idea there. Yeah. And what a healthy gut microbiome does, it secretes certain chemicals and so-called short-chain fatty acids, and they're really healthy for our gut wall, and they're really anti-inflammatory. And the way you can make sure you have a healthy gut microbiome is eating a lot of variety of fruits and foods, and especially a lot of fiber dense foods. And fiber is a form of carbohydrate, so a form of sugar that we as humans cannot digest, but it's really important for the survival of this gut microbiome.
So a lot of fiber. You also mentioned a variety of different foods. What exactly do you mean by that?
So it's now understood, in order to make sure you have one of the healthiest gut microbiome possible, you would have to eat around 30 different types of fiber a week, and that comes in form of fruits, vegetables, nuts, seeds, whole grains. And think about, you have those trillions of bugs. They're quite picky, you know. They don't all want to eat onions, you know, like they want to have different foods. And this is why you want to give your gut microbiome the best chance possible, you want to have a variety of foods. And what comes with a variety of foods come so-called phytonutrients. So phytonutrients are plant-produced pesticides. So they are chemicals produced by nutrients produced by a plant to protect itself from mosquitoes and parasites, etc. And this is why it's so important to eat organic, because if you have pesticides from the outside, the plant doesn't need to develop those nutrients to protect itself. And we start now to understand that those phytonutrients have such a big impact on our health. So for example, tomatoes contain a phytonutrient called lycopene, and lycopene is associated with reduced risk of prostate cancer in men. Then we have a nutrient called resveratrol in grapes and in red wine, and that's associated with reduced risk of heart disease. Then you have your catechins, epicatechins in green tea and in chocolate. So the list goes on, and we are now starting to fully understand the health impact of those phytonutrients, and therefore you really want to have as much variety and color in your diet as possible.
Eat the rainbow.
Absolutely. Best way.
So fruits, veg, nuts, seeds, all those, but make sure they're different and different colors, basically.
Absolutely.
All those phytonutrients.
Absolutely. Good summary.
Yeah. Eat the rainbow. Not Skittles, but
absolutely.
You know, maybe you can have that once in a while.
Yeah.
I wanted to also ask you about, I've heard a lot about the gut wall.
Yeah.
What exactly is that? I know obviously it's probably it's in the gut, but can you just tell me a bit more about what is the gut wall and why it's so important for it to be healthy?
So when it comes to gut wall, think about a donut, and you have like the hole in the middle, right?
Yeah.
And the hole in the middle is like your food tube, so that runs all the way from your mouth all the way to your buttock, right? So, and you eat a food, and in order for your body to use that food and those nutrients, it needs to be broken down into really small, tiny particles. And once they're small enough, they need to be absorbed across that gut wall. And that gut wall is normally like, there are no gaps in between. So it's like shoelaces. And that's really important because it basically prevents you from substances going past and into your bloodstream that you don't really want in your bloodstream. So, but what happens, every time you've eaten something, you create a little gap between those gut cells. And I call that transient leaky gut, okay? And it's necessary so you can absorb those nutrients. So transient leaky gut is very natural and is not a problem. It becomes a problem when the transient leaky gut becomes chronic. And that chronic leaky gut state can be caused by stress, lack of sleep, environmental toxins like BPA in plastic, parabens, in cosmetic products, and the list goes on and on and on. And food intolerances. So the most common food allergens are cow's milk, then we have gluten and wheat, egg, shellfish, etc. And that can lead to this chronic leaky gut. And what happens then? So those gut junctions start to open up, and they'll chronically open up, and all of a sudden those food molecules and molecules which shouldn't really go past enter your bloodstream. And once they're in your bloodstream, this is where your immune system, some of your immune system sits, and then you start getting this chronic low grade immune system attack and inflammation. And we now start to understand that this chronic low-grade inflammation is probably one of the reasons and causations behind type 2 diabetes, heart conditions, some cancers, depression, etc. And when we link this now back to COVID-19, imagine your immune system is constantly fighting all the time and is constantly on alert. And then a virus comes that our body has never encountered before. And it might just be overwhelmed. And this is why we might see this risk group emerging and this high death rate in risk groups that have metabolic disorders like diabetes, that have heart conditions and high blood pressure, etc.
That's really interesting. Really interesting. So yeah, chronic leaky gut is not good.
Yeah.
Shima, I've just seen your question, but we will be taking questions at the end, but just because it's here now, because we were on the topic of sort of microbiome.
Yeah.
How essential is it to have probiotics in your diet, daily or weekly? What do you think?
So the probiotic, is it supplements or is it just probiotics in the diet?
I'm guessing that's a supplement, or you mean like, because yogurt is a probiotic as well.
So it has probiotic strains. So the reality with probiotic supplements is they are just placeholders. They will not stay in your gut, okay? But it's still okay if you struggle with something called gut dysbiosis, which is a problem with the different microbiome types. So you have probably more pro-inflammatory types than anti-inflammatory types. What probiotics do, they can kind of help you to create a more anti-inflammatory environment. So it's a good start, but it shouldn't make you, it's not the solution to the problem. What's necessary to feed a healthy gut microbiome is your prebiotics. And that's prebiotics, exactly. So, and that's your, you find that in leek, you find that in onions, garlic, asparagus. There's a whole list you can look up online. So if you think probiotic, also think prebiotic.
Definitely. Awesome. Thank you, Maxi.
Welcome.
Moving on to diet in general, what do you think is the perfect diet? Is there sort of a one fits all, or just in general, if someone asks you what is the perfect diet, what do you think about that?
So I don't think there's such a thing as a perfect diet, because we are all genetically really different and we all need slightly different approach to health, I think. But there's some core principles that everyone can follow. So first of all, if you suspect that you have a food intolerance, so you're sensitive to certain foods, then maybe try to cut those things out in your diet. And ideally you follow an elimination diet with a healthcare professional or nutritional therapist. And what they will do, they will ask you to remove that food for 3 to 6 weeks or sometimes longer, and reintroduce those foods again, and then see if you have an adverse reaction to those. And that allows it, that's pretty much the only diet out there that allows you to basically remove all those pro-inflammatory causing substances out of your diet, and help you to go back to your status quo and then rebuild a healthy gut lining. So that's, I think, step number 1.
Yeah.
Then you want to have as unprocessed foods as possible. So really follow real food rule. So that means less than 5 ingredients. So as a little challenge, maybe for next week, or once this quarantine is over and we kind of have everything back in stock.
Back to normal. Or what is normal.
Exactly. Go to the supermarket and check food labels, and only buy the foods that have less than 5 ingredients. Because you don't really want to feed yourself something that has so many byproducts in them, that ingredients that we don't even quite understand what they do to our body. And quite often those highly processed, high ingredient products, they are really high in salt, which high salt can damage your gut lining directly. They are really high in sugar, and high sugar is like refined sugar is not great anyways. And they are not very nutritious. So you're basically eating empty calories rather than having a really nutritious diet, healthy diet. Then I would suggest seasonal products and seasonal produce. So right now it's asparagus, carrots, potatoes, berries are in season soon, because everything that's in season means less pesticides. And we talked about pesticides previously. Less pesticides means more phytonutrients and minerals and vitamins. Fiber, and variety. We talked about this.
Yeah.
And when it comes to fats, I think fats had a lot of bad rep over the last couple of years, but they're good fats and bad fats. And when I talk about good fats, I mean the fats that are liquid under room temperature, so your unsaturated fats. And you kind of want to get the omega-3 and omega-6 fats into your diet. So you find them in fish, so salmon, avocado, nuts, seeds, olive oil. So, and they're really important for immune cell regulation. And you want to kind of cut down on your on the fats which are solid under room temperature. So we call them monounsaturated fats. And no, we call them saturated fats. There we go. Not unsaturated, we call them saturated fats. Because not that they're unhealthy, but you just want to cut down on them because they're just not as good as your unsaturated fats.
Oh. I thought it was the opposite way around, because a lot of people say like coconut oil is really good.
Not if recent research has shown, not if you have them in large quantities. Same effect as butter, for example.
Okay.
But just make sure with your polyunsaturated fats, so the liquid ones, they have a very specific temperature point. So I wouldn't use them for like cooking, because or to heat them up, because they start breaking and then they start creating byproducts which can be harmful to the body. So you want to use saturated fats for cooking, so like heating up and frying, and you want to use the unsaturated fats for dressings and salads, etc. So yeah, I think that's it in a nutshell.
In terms of the perfect diet, which apparently doesn't exist, but these are the things that we can do. Oh my god, sorry, this is like moving quite a lot. These are the things that we can do to just try and be super healthy.
Yeah.
I also wanted to ask you about fasting.
Yeah.
So I know a lot of people are fasting because of Ramadan at the moment.
Yeah.
But I know a lot of people also just fast in general, sort of intermittent fasting and that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
What do you think about intermittent fasting or fasting in general?
Yeah, so I think fasting has quite a big body of research, especially because of Ramadan. I think scientific researchers realized it's a really good time to do some research on what fasting has and the effects of fasting on the body.
Yeah.
And so what basically happens every time you eat, you create an inflammatory response in your body naturally. So this happens every time when you eat. It doesn't matter if you eat like crisps or vegetables. Of course, it's better to eat vegetables, but that inflammatory response happens. So the only way to shut down this inflammatory response is by not eating. So, and this is why fasting has emerged as something beneficial, but we don't know yet what type of fasting is the best. So, is it what is it, 5-2 fasting diet, or if a fasting approach, or is it like eating once a day and then fasting for several hours? So we don't quite know. And there are also implications that for some conditions it's not ideal. So you always want to work with a healthcare professional when it comes to that.
Definitely. My personal, don't want to fast if you have diabetes.
Yeah, I'd be careful with that. Or when you're pregnant, or other, in children, it depends. So my personal approach to fasting is, so I try to eat within an 8 to 10 hour window. So I fast for 14 to 16 hours. And the way I do it, I eat around 6 or 7 o'clock, and then I have breakfast quite late the next day. So it feels quite natural and it's not as hard. And there's another way. So it comes from Japan, and the Japanese tend to say only eat 80% till you're full. So don't eat till breaking point, only feel 80% full. So that's a way of calorie restriction that could be beneficial as well.
Definitely. Awesome. So to summarize, what would be your 5 top tips for a healthier immune system?
Okay, so I think sleep, because we started with sleep, so we start again with sleep. Just sleep enough. And if you really want to know more about sleep, read this great book by Matthew Walker. It's called Why We Sleep. It's quite scary to read it, because it just shows you how important healthy sleep is. But it's fascinating. It's really interesting. And then exercise regularly, but again within your tolerance zone. Okay, so just make sure you build up slowly, so you don't overwhelm your body and your immune system. But regular movement is key and is really, really important. And it also gets you out of the house at the moment, and I think we all need a bit of sunshine and vitamin D. Definitely. So exactly. And then stress management. So we talked about meditation apps or breathing techniques, because stress suppresses your immune system, so you kind of want to make sure you're are balanced. And then dietary wise, to put it in a nutshell, try to eat a diet that is as unprocessed as possible, so less than 5 ingredients in the food you're eating. Of course, you can have more than 5 ingredients, for example, in a curry, but it's a homemade curry. And just rainbow diet, and as much variety as you can. Like I repeat again, 30 different types of fiber a week to really hit all those gut microbiome, like all those little bugs running around in your guts. And just a quick word on supplements. Like I'm a big food first approach person, but if I would have to recommend like 3 supplements that I would find necessary for a healthy immune system, it's vitamin D. Vitamin D is really important for those gut junctions that we talked about. You get vitamin D from the sun, but supplementation is sometimes implicated. And zinc is really important, especially our soil. So where our vegetables grow, our soil doesn't contain as much zinc anymore. So we might be low in zinc in general. And zinc is really important for our immune cells. And then I would also suggest potentially magnesium. It helps you to relax. It helps your muscles to calm down. And it's also important for sleep and immune cell function. So yeah,
amazing. That's it. Great. That's a great summary. So I'll be looking at the questions that we've got. So we'll just have time for a few questions. Let me see how this works. Chunchal says, should we be eating less that we're not going out and spending that much energy at the moment?
Okay, so of course the idea is to only eat as much calories, like you only eat as many calories as you can put out. So that entirely depends on how much you move at the moment. Like I know a lot of people who move more at the moment than they did when the quarantine wasn't there. So it really depends how much you do. But quarantine shouldn't encourage you to become more sedentary. Okay, so to not move as much. So it really depends. That the question depends on how active you are. Yeah. Basically. And on your goals. Do you want to lose weight? Do you want to put on weight? Do you want to maintain weight?
Yeah, exactly. Another question from Siddhant. He's asking, how can we boost our metabolism?
Okay. So
well, what is, so if you could just say kind of what is metabolism?
So it's your way of how you produce your energy. So and how you burn calories, etc. So it depends on why do you need it for, and what are you aiming to do with boosting your metabolism. So I know a lot about the vitamins that are important for metabolism. So like your B vitamins are really important, which you again cover with a really with a fiber dense rainbow diet. And you can send me a personal message in regards to that. And I can give you some more information, or you can give me some more information, and then I can answer that question a bit more adequately.
Perfect. I think that's it for questions. Thank you guys so much for joining. Wait, let me just go through them so I'm not missing any out. I think we're all good. Yeah, thank you, Maxi, for your time.
Thank you.
Just want to say again that, you know, Maxi, she does have sort of a functional medicine approach to osteopathy, and she's currently doing consultations online for both osteopathy and nutritional therapy. I might be biased because obviously she's one of my best friends, but she is really good to kind of go through those, you know, that elimination phase. So yeah, I would highly recommend her. I just let everyone know how they can get in contact with you. I'm gonna, once I repost this, because I totally forgot to write on the comment and pin it, your website. So it's www.intuithealth.org, and your page is at Maxi_nutritional_osteopathy. So thank you guys for tuning in. Yeah, if you just want to, how people can contact you, I guess.
Oh, absolutely. Like Pooja said, over my website. So you find my website link on my nutrition, like Maxi Nutritional Osteopathy Instagram profile as well. And they you can book a consultation online. So yeah, I'd say that's the best way of contacting me. Or send me a direct message via Instagram. That's not a problem at all.
Yeah, slide into her DMs, everyone. Well, thank you guys for joining us so much. This was like our first
exciting
Instagram live, so
thank you.
But yeah, stay safe. Have a good evening, and yes, I'm sure we will do something like this again. If you're interested in a certain topic, then send us a message and things like that. So yeah, thank you so much. Take care, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye, Maxi.
Bye.
See you. Bye.